As the guy turned away, the girl patted herself on the cheeks and drove away all stupid thoughts. When the main character entered the dressing room, the people there did not recognize him. Batten himself noted that there were a lot of people in this room. Someone remembered that this was the guy who had just performed a duet with Melissa. The student did not listen to these conversations because he was only interested in how Kathleen would react to these changes. When he sat down at his place, the same pseudo-artist whose name was Jerry came onto the stage. The vocalist did not understand why he was invited to concerts, because he had already disgraced himself twice with a soundtrack. Fortunately, Batten's magic microphone has not gone away yet. But if you disgrace Jerry, then the entire charity concert will be disgraced. And their work with Melissa will be devalued, and the very idea of charity concerts will be cast in a shadow. We can deal with this guy later because there's no point in ruining today's concert with scandals. At this time, a representative of the South Agency approached Batten and asked for some time for a business conversation. This was the same agency that produces Jerry, and therefore the main character thought that they suspected him. But in order not to show it, he agreed, and the men went to the nearest cafe. Before this, the student wrote to Melissa saying that he would leave so that she would not look for him. A couple of minutes later, he was sitting opposite an agency representative named Tom. He said that they have been following the guy for a long time and have seen his streams. They know that the main character becomes successful in everything. Company Yug values Batten's media potential very highly and wants to sign a contract with him. Since now the guy is at the very beginning of his journey, thanks to the company's experience, he can become popular like Jerry. The main character thanked them for the offer and said that he did not want to become like Jerry. The agent said that there is no need to refuse so abruptly, because the company provides excellent conditions. The streamer responded that they needed people who would do anything for money and fame, but he is not going to do everything for the sake of fame that the agency requires of him, especially one whose artists sing along to a soundtrack. Bitan is an ordinary guy who just wants to draw manga and attract readers on his own, and his plans do not include building a personal brand on lies and fraud. Tom said that it was time for him to grow up and stop being an idealist, because there is no place for principles in show business. Be that as it may, the main character is not going to go against the principles for the sake of enriching some agents. On this note, he stood up from the table and announced that he had more important things to do. Coming out of the building, the student noted how much this Tom's face was distorted. When he took a couple of steps, something suddenly fell on him from the upper floors. He turned around and shouted upstairs that there should be a bucket at home for garbage. But then I looked closer and realized that it was a ring with a real diamond. It was unclear whether this was a coincidence or the effect of +1 unit of luck. After this fall, the Super Spender task opened for Batten, where he had to spend $100 million. It's funny that the goal of spending $1 million at one time shocked the guy more than the current $100 million. The main character did not even guess when he would complete this task. His thoughts were interrupted by a man who came out into the street a few minutes after the ring fell. He asked if the student was okay and offered to take him to the hospital. The guy replied that he was fine and recommended closing the window next time he quarrels with his wife. The man thanked him for the ring and added that if he had returned without the ring, his wife would not even have let him into the door. He further offered to add his wishat, and if upon returning home he felt that he was not feeling well, he would immediately write to him. Suddenly, Batten grinned slyly and asked if the man was afraid that he would start extorting. But according to him, since the guy returned his expensive ring, then he cannot be bad. The main character managed to defuse the situation and said that he was just joking. Seeing his WeChat, he asked if he worked at the chocolate factory and if his name was Charlie. The stranger replied that they call him that because of the peculiarities of his surname. By the way, the streamer is a big fan of everything that their studio produces, and they are especially good at dubbing anime. Suddenly, Charlie invited his new friend to try his hand at this business. As it turned out, luck was not finding a diamond ring, but meeting a new person. As a child, Batten had a dream of drawing manga and voicing his favorite anime characters. It seemed to him that both of his childhood dreams were close to coming true. Before recording a sample voiceover for Charlie, the guy decided to see what kind of reward he was entitled to. You could choose either +10 units to a random characteristic or +5 units to a selected one. Knowing the insidiousness of this system, the main character chose the second option. And then I wondered where these 5 units would look best. Of course, the best thing was to pump up luck, the most valuable characteristic. But luck belongs to the category of special characteristics, and it is impossible to pump it up in this way. It seemed to the student that this system was making up rules on the fly. Although it was quite logical, if for $1 million spent he received 1 unit, and for 100 he would receive 3, then 5 units at once would be too fat. Since you can't choose luck, the streamer decided to upgrade skills that will help him in voice acting. First of all, it is imagination, and secondly, the power of the voice is pumped up. After leveling up, Batten decided to take on the task the plot was already indicated there. The school will soon be beset by an enemy threat in which only a few will be able to survive, and the master decides to expel his beloved student in order to protect him from death. The master sharply announced that from today the guy is not his student. He added that he should leave and not return, but the student did not understand this and asked for forgiveness. The master had already turned away from him, and he even knelt down and bowed to the floor, asking for forgiveness. The student was ready to accept any punishment, as long as he could remember the master was always nearby. Now this guy can't imagine life without him, but the master doesn't answer. Then he turns around and declares that if his student does not leave, then he will only have himself to blame for what happened. On this note, the main character completed the voice acting and clicked and sent the work to Charlie. The job was done, and all that remained was to be patient and wait for an answer. At this time, Kathleen wrote to Batten saying that she had watched his performance yesterday, and then she added that she was also keeping up and sent news in her field. The guy saw a headline about the most beautiful restorer and thought that this was his girlfriend. In the Forbidden City, painting restoration events took place, and users paid attention to this event only thanks to one girl. She was part of the restorers, and her name was Kathleen. The girl is studying at the Faculty of Traditional Painting and became known for her bright appearance. The girl with pink hair was already waiting to board the plane when Batten wrote to her that she now had fans all over the country. Then, the student asked when she was going to return home because he wanted to see her as soon as possible. Kathleen said that she would be home in a couple of days and added that the guy would have another tournament tomorrow. When he said that it was time to go to bed, the main character thought that the girl was just tired and was already going to bed. But if it weren't for her, the streamer wouldn't even remember about the tournament today. In the morning, the student came to the tournament at 9 o'clock in the morning. It was already the state level. There he noticed Kathleen and went to her, bombarding her with questions about what happened. There were so many of them that in the end she said that the guy didn't even pause to answer them. After this, the girl noted that they had not seen each other for only a few days, but Batten had changed so much. The main character laughed and said that it seemed so to her because Kathleen fell head over heels in love. She did not answer this and asked if the guy was worried before the tournament. And then she added that no matter how careless he may seem, he should under no circumstances relax. Her speech was interrupted by the voice of the host that the tournament was about to begin, and the participants needed to go to the competition area. After the start of the competition, Batten knew that he needed to show others what he was capable of with two healthy hands. When the first round ended, the student scored 847 points and updated his own record. Kathleen shouted from the crowd that Batten was invincible and moving forward. On the faces of the other participants, one could observe an absolute lack of understanding of what was happening. In the second round, the streamer again updates the record, gaining 848 points. On the third lap, he scored 849 points, and in the first lap of the second stage, he scored 850 points. In each next round, the main character scores 1 point more than in the previous one and sets a new world record. He seems to mock the other participants, as if their presence here is simply pointless. The audience no longer faces the question of who will be the winner. All that remains is to find out whether he will be able to update the record in the next round. The guy understood that he needed to score exactly 2 more points. For this, the next ball must not land clean. The streamer set up a goal for the ball as a backboard to get 2 points instead of 3. But something went wrong, and the ball flew into the ring without touching the backboard, bringing the guy 3 points. Batten didn't understand how it happened, because he was aiming so as to throw it away from the shield. At the awards ceremony, the system awarded him another point of championship glory. Immediately, journalists bombarded him with questions about why he didn't score 1 more point in the last round, and whether the winner was going to continue breaking his records. The main character replied that he would not make any guesses about new records, but promised that in any case, he would give his best. Going outside, the guy said that the journalists couldn't keep up with him, so he apologized to Kathleen. She only added that all big victories will certainly be accompanied by great attention. Suddenly, Kathleen turned to Loaf and kissed him on the cheek, which the guy did not expect at all. After that, she said that now she too officially congratulated him on his victory. But their sweet conversation was interrupted by a call that came to the streamer's phone. The girl held his cup while the main character answered a call from Charlie. He said he listened to the tape, but right now they don't have any characters that fit the tone of Batten's voice. The student replied that he did not immediately pretend to voice the main characters, and asked to be allowed to voice the most insignificant character. The guy wanted to at least get in touch with this industry, so he decided to go to the office after lunch. At the appointed time, he was already in the Creative Studios district, but did not know where the chocolate factory was located. Suddenly, a man with green hair came towards him and asked if he was the guy who sings and draws manga. When this man said that he knew Batten, the student wondered whether he knew about him when he was sent, or whether he already knew about him. To the words that the singer had an appointment with director Charlie, he replied that he was now taking him to see him. A couple of minutes later, the student was already in Charlie's office, who bought some good tea and offered to try it. The main character sat down at the table, and the director was already starting a conversation with him. He said that there was strength in Batten's voice, but at the same time, the lack of any experience in voice acting was very noticeable. The man knows that the streamer has already succeeded in many areas and has performed on big stages, but dubbing is something completely different. If a person has no experience, then he will have to start with the most insignificant characters, and the payment will be appropriate. The interlocutor replied that one should not think that successes in other areas have gone to his head. He's serious about dubbing. Being a novice in this area, he would not have dared to put forward any conditions, and there is nothing to say about money. With these words, the guy convinced Charlie, and he invited him to move directly to the studio itself and try. The director gave him a character who has a warm and simple voice. He has few lines, but every time he says something important. John understood the task and tried to present himself as a wise adult man with a lot of life experience who speaks little, but his nephew needs his guidance. This uncle serves as a role model for his nephew, and Batten said his phrase about never betraying your dream. Charlie couldn't expect him to dive so deep for one line, and he couldn't wait to shower him with compliments. But since he had trained himself not to praise newcomers so that they would have room for progress, he said that the student's speech rate was not quite appropriate. The man suggested that he pause after the word never, after which the main character said this phrase many more times. After all the attempts, Charlie couldn't help but say it was perfect. Couldn't have said it better. Suddenly, Batten had a board with the task Studio Worm, where you had to voice 100 characters in order to get 5 points of voice acting skill. Finally, he waited for this task, because he was slightly disappointed when the system did not give it after recording the test task. The student logged out and attacked the director with a question about whether there were any more minor characters. After showing the scripts, Charlie realized that this guy was a true fan of the Chocolate Factory, and he could do some good. Within a couple of minutes, Batten voiced the man who was being tortured, but he was not going to betray his ruler and did not reveal any secrets. He also voiced a servant who did not know how to report to his master that the emperor had died. Thus, the streamer voiced quite a lot of minor characters with very different personalities. At the end of the recording, Charlie praised the guy and said that he was doing better and better every time. But their dialogue was interrupted by the guy with green stripes who brought a visitor to the office. As it turned out, Alan came to the director, but he did not warn about his visit, because he had urgent business. Charlie has not distributed all the roles among the actors, and Alan will have to find people himself to voice the remaining characters. The blonde apologized and said that he was just tired, and he had already found people to record and promised that he would record a demo version today. He sent Alan to sit in the office and drink tea, and he himself stated that the man would not have time to get bored before he would return with a recording. The guy with green hair was named Baxter, and Charlie assigned him to take care of the guest. The director immediately returned to the studio and told Batten that it was time for a real test. There is a cartoon for preschoolers, and for several minor male characters, actors have not yet been found, and Charlie needs the main character to help him out. In this cartoon, there is a grandfather pine tree. He is very old and wise. He loves children, and children love him. They often come to him to share experiences that they cannot share with others. There is also a Drake teacher, a kind, but at times strict, but still a good character. His voice should be more human when voicing him. Also in the cartoon, there is a big elephant, a crocodile, and an old turtle director. The pink crocodile is also a teacher, and the turtle director has memory problems. After a little more than half an hour, the streamer completed the voice acting of all the characters. Charlie said that he would go give Alan the recording, but the guy was busy looking at the scoreboard with the completed task. From a mission perspective, voicing minor characters has proven to be very rewarding for him. The student wanted to hear how he sounded with his new voiceover skills, but was prevented by the director who wanted to sign him to a contract. It was very obvious to Charlie that Batten had great potential in voice acting, and he wanted the guy to become one of them. The man offers very flexible conditions under the contract. The main character will be able to refuse uninteresting projects and even work with other studios. Once the contract is signed, the Chocolate Factory will act as an agent for the streamer. In other words, they will find him work and take a percentage of his fees. According to the contract, it is proposed to divide the fee 70 by 30. Given that the studio will find orders for the guy, this looks generous, so the student signed it. After this, the men shook hands, now like real colleagues. Batten noted that since the formalities have already been settled, we can continue to work on the voice acting. It seemed that the Chocolate Factory had another fan of the voice acting craft. On the way home, the guy realized that in just half a day he had voiced 29 characters. Suddenly, a board appeared in front of him about completing the newsmaker task, where he had to become a news hero 10 times. It turns out that yesterday's performance of the main character at a charity concert and today's victory at the tournament did their job. The tasks, of course, are being completed, but there are no fewer of them. There were much more unfinished ones than completed ones. You don't even have to complete the tasks, Crazy Liker and Reliable Man. But the guy will trust the champion, newsmaker, and super spender to fate. He could complete the million donations task